Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan Maiden.
But what's more impressive to me about the
Chase
fact
Thornton.
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
Chris Dowhouse.
Get him, Chase. Get him, Chase.
And Adam
No,
LaRue.
not necessarily, but it's again the same.
Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
Well, welcome to the show. I'm not sure if we have all our people here. Dan's having a little technical difficulties. Chase, Adam, you joining me today. We want to talk about what we're talking about for today's show, guys.
We're talking about the NFC East. If we get Dan back from Love Connection land, there, he's kind of frozen like the second date on the rundown there. But yeah, we're gonna end up talking about the NFC East today. We covered the AFC East on Sunday. Today we're moving to the NFC side of things here. We lose Dan. We'll probably get Dan back. He's pretty good about navigating that kind of stuff. But in the meantime, hey, welcome into Operation Domination. I am Chase Thornton coming to you from the Mott and Bailey Basement Bar, and we've got Adam LaRue there. We got Chris there. Chris starting us off there. How are we doing, good boys?
I look like I'm in a basement right now, Chase. I'm sitting here in the dark. I was trying to get some light before we came on the show, but at least I'm live. Adam was about people dying on this show, so at least I'm alive, Adam, and I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah, well, that's pretty great. Def.
Oh, two of us, three of us.
Oh, and we've come back.
Kind of three of us. Excellent.
we're I don't know where Chris went. Got lost in the ether.
We're not sure where any of us went here, but I know we're going to be. Yeah, well, we can hear you. You're cut up. You're choppy there, Dan, but you're with us here. Well, you were.
All right. Well, try to get this going. Okay, so obviously, we're all hard here on the Operation Domination Star Fantasy Football Advice Network. It's preseason for the season drops. Don't you guys worry.
Yeah, I don't think it's...
we were supposed to have. Maybe we're supposed to have Anthony Servino on. Unfortunately, we had a last second rescheduling that we're going to have to do with him. We will get him on at some point. So apologize for that. That was the plan this week. We are still going to do the NFC East team profile though, and get through it with hopefully no further issues. One last sound check, gentlemen. Are we good?
We're good right now. We're good currently.
Hearing you now. Yep.
Okay. Just want to double check before we move any further. So yeah, I'm your host Dan Chase and Adam.
We have fallen back.
And so here's what we're gonna do. Quarterbacks that we want to talk about the NFC profile to kick it off right. The first guy we want to talk about is Jalen Hurts. Adam, if you hear me, let's swing this to you. Hopefully,
I heard Adam. So,
Yeah.
Adam, we'll start off with you, buddy.
All right, so we're talking about, I'm going to assume, Jalen Hurts. So I think the big thing is what does the tush push look like, right? Because that's where the bulk of the points from Jalen Hurts have kind of been coming from. The whole either the tush push or before that when they were prolific at the QB sneak regardless. But is that interior push going to be quite the same? I think it probably will be. But I do think that is the question when you're valuing him, because I mean, realistically, you're kind of expecting the rushing touchdowns to carry the load, unless you think he's gonna suddenly break, past, into the 30+ touchdown territory, which I don't personally expect. So it's whether or not the rushing touchdowns are going to continue to be put out at a prolific pace. Again, I think he's got the physicality to do it. Maybe it'll be look different in how that's being achieved. What's scary about him is Saquon Barkley coming in and that potentially being a bigger part of the red zone offense. But ultimately, I think just him being such a weapon, changing the math on the goal line. I have him at QB3. Chris, I know you're at QB2. Dan at QB2. Chase at QB3. We're all right there. I personally have that top 3 in a tier. I don't know if you guys, kind of do as well. But I think those guys are, kind of similar, like being dominant QB1s. But to me, at least, of the top three, I think he does have the most questions. But I'm still making that bet regardless, because if he is as prolific in the end zone as he's been, then I mean, he's going to be fantastic for fantasy.
Well, and the nice thing about Hurts right now is, I mean, even if he's not as prolific, I mean, the guy had 15 rushing touchdowns last season. And like you mentioned, the tush push may be a thing of the past, or at least the tush push as we knew it. But it's not like 15 touchdowns was a crazy out of character thing for him, to do. Sure. And even if he does, say he hits half of that, say he gets 8 rushing touchdowns this season, loses 40 some points, he's still a top 5 type scoring quarterback based on, points from last season. I mean, if you take 40 points away from what he did last season, 6.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think the question is whether or not he's a QB1 or something terrible would need to happen for that. It's just whether or not, he maintains, the value we're looking at. Because again, we all have him in the top 3, give or take.
This is like survival of the fittest here on this show. But I'm with you, Adam and Chase. Look, here's my difference, Adam, that I'm not maybe as worried about. Tush push gets a lot of credit for Jalen Hurts' touchdowns, but we all look back as his freshman, sophomore year, and junior year in college. This guy's a run first quarterback. He's always been built kind of like a linebacker. He's always had the mentality to kind of run the ball. Doesn't get hurt a lot. And the Eagle offense shouldn't be nearly as pathetic as it was towards the end of the season last year. So add all those different things. From what I'm understanding in camp, you're seeing a lot more motion. You're seeing a lot more bunch formations. You're actually going to see Jalen Hurts have opportunity to kind of be utilized different way than just being the obvious situation. So I have a little more hope for him. And while I have a little concerned about Josh Allen, continuing that consistency, we talked about that last show, 15 touchdown rushes for Josh Allen is a little more out of character than it is for Jalen Hurts. So I think we're all in agreement. He's definitely a top 3 guy, but a guy that, maybe that we're kind of nitpicking a little bit here or there depending on what our preferences are. You guys want to move on to the next quarterback position we're looking at, and how about them Cowboys? Casey, when it's hard about the Cowboys, where do you got Dak Prescott on your board right now?
Right, yeah, Dak Prescott, last year's quarterback 3 overall, had a great year, phenomenal year. We were talking about him in the MVP conversation here, and again, we don't know. I don't think we all.
Oh, hello! It is just me now. Dak Prescott is who we're talking about. Chase, back to you.
Now, Chris has him ranked highest of all 4 of us at 6. Adam, you and I have him at 7. Dan has him all the way down at 9. Now, Chris, what's your thoughts here on Dak Prescott? Why do you have him at 6? You're actually highest of the 4 of us here. What's your thoughts on Dak Prescott there, and why do you have him at 6?
Yeah, I mean, I have him a little bit higher than you guys do. But look, Dak Prescott was one of the best quarterbacks. This is an MVP candidate last year. I know that we all remember the Green Bay game, and we kind of hold it against him. But he still put up a lot of yards in that Green Bay game if we kind of forget about that part. So for fantasy, it's not about what your team does necessarily win and loss-wise. It's about how many points they put up. And we saw Dak Prescott get into his zone last year with McCarthy as head coach and offensive coordinator. We saw him kind of, get in a rhythm with CeeDee Lamb. As long as these guys don't miss time, in my opinion, there's no injury bugs. They have a lot to both prove. Dak Prescott was one of the more consistent guys you could have your lineup week in, week out. So for me, it's the guy that we're all down on the Cowboys, kind of what happened this offseason. But let's not forget, they didn't lose anybody offensively, and they have another year in this system, another more comfortable, understanding what they want to be. And Dak Prescott, while the offensive line's got some concerns, I think what they did in the draft's going to kind of benefit them long term and probably short term as well. So I think Dak Prescott's a guy that is going to be a guy you like to have. And if he scrambles a little bit, Chase, then you're maybe have even a top 5 option.
Here's the thing: we were talking about what a phenomenal year he was having, and he did. But honestly, it wasn't and I'll refer to this later when I talk about CeeDee Lamb when we get to the wide receivers, but it wasn't a wildly out of character year for Dak passing the football. Outside of his completion percentage and his passer rating, he didn't set any career highs last season. It was just, he had a good year, but it was kind of just a Dak year, and things fell together. He was pretty efficient, but when you look at all things considered, like I said, it wasn't like it was this crazy out of character year. And I think that there are going to be other circumstances. I think that you can lock him in as a QB1 this year. I don't know that he necessarily makes it back to QB3, but I think he's a locked in quarterback 1 here. So I don't think we're arguing that too much, but we're going to move on to Jaden Daniels. And this is a guy that we do have some beef with each other on it.
If we
So
had
sad.
Dan for the soundbite, this would be a Chase v. Chris right now.
This would be a showdown right here between you and me, Chris. Here now, Chris, you've got him ranked all the way up at number 8. You're highest out of all 4 of us on this one. Dan's got him at 11. Adam's got him at 13. I have him down at 18. Okay, now I'm curious to know why you have him all the way up at 8, or what your argument is for all the way up at 8. Then I'll tell you why I've got him at 18. And
as
Adam,
an outside spectator, I just got to say, for this to be the way this goes, because I think in the pre-draft process, this is probably reversed.
right?
In terms of actually liking the player. So anyways, I just had to say that is hilarious to me.
No, well, so let's clarify with some things. Number one, Adam, we're not talking about dynasty, and that was a lot of big we focused on going into the draft was our dynasty perspectives of these quarterbacks. Diane Daniels is a guy who I have concerns about being injured, but one thing I don't have concerns about is a guy who is going to have one read, tuck, and run. And that is something he did a lot of last year. And then add the fact that you have Cliff Kingsbury as your offensive coordinator, who's pretty uncreative overall as an offensive coordinator, in my opinion. So what does he kind of do? A lot of shotgun, a lot of spreading out, and a lot of running with his quarterback, especially in the red zone. So Jaden Daniels to me is a guy who has a great cheat code when it comes into fantasy football, especially when it comes to redraft leagues. A guy I'm not worried about the long term. And then the other guy on the flip side has some weapons in place. You got Terry McLaurin, you got Jahan Dotson, you got different guys, and you have to score with these teams. Eagles are going to score points. Dallas is going to score points. So Washington's going to have some games where they're going to have to put up some points on the board, put all the things together. Jaden Daniels is a guy who's a rookie, one read, throws the ball to guys who are open or chucks it and runs. I'm going to go with the guys 9 out of 10 times. That's what we see consistently score out for you to fantasy football. Justin Fields effect.
All right, well, I can't necessarily argue with anything you said there. Like, I'm not down on Jaden Daniels as a player long term. I'm just not overly excited about taking the step to draft him and redraft this season. Okay. Like, we know that rookie quarterbacks can be successful right away. We saw it last season with Stroud. We saw with Justin Herbert was a top 10 quarterback in 2020. Heck, under this same offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray was a top 10 quarterback his rookie season in 2019, running this exact same offense. So it's not like it can't be done, right? But I'm just not overly confident, like I said, in redraft compared to the guys that I have ranked around him. Washington has a middle of the road quarterback strength of schedule this season. So, I mean, he's not going to be like overly taxed in terms of the defenses he's facing. He's not running a complete gauntlet. But honestly, I'm not far off of consensus on this. Coming into today, his ECR was 16 and ADP had him at 17. So me having him at 18, I'm a little lower than consensus, but not crazy out of left field on it. I will say that you mentioned it's not about dynasty, and you joked, Adam, that hey, in the pre-draft process, we were probably reversed. I probably like Jaden Daniels more than Chris did. I'm taking him at 1-3 in my dynasty superflex drafts, and I am loving it all day long. And I have no problem with that. And in best ball, especially if I can get him as a number 2, I'm all over that, because I think that he is going to be able to have, because of his rushing upside, those spike weeks. But I think that you got to look at, like Murray being a top 10 quarterback in this offense. He was already familiar with Cliff Kingsbury. Kingsbury knew what he had coming in there. They knew each other. They were comfortable with each other. They knew the offense.
Offense isn't complicated, though. That's my whole point, Chase. Offense isn't complicated at all.
It's not, but he's still new to the NFL, and I'm not sure that he's as NFL ready as, say, Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams was the only actual NFL ready guy that got drafted this season. I'm a little bit leery of taking him higher than where I've got him ranked. I mean, I've got him ranked around guys like, I've got Rodgers and Herbert right in front of him. I've got Lawrence right in front of him at 15. I do have Daniels ranked higher than Stafford. I've got him ranked higher than Watson. I've got him ranked higher than a couple other guys that I think could have good years if things fall right for him, but I'm not super confident in him.
My question real quick, we'll move on from this, but Adam, I'd love you to jump on your kind of point perspective, because you're kind of middle between the two of us. To me, I'm looking at a guy who we saw a couple of years ago. Daniel Jones was top 6 quarterback fantasy football wise, and doesn't have nearly explosiveness that Jaden Daniels has better weapons in place than he does. So I expect more 15 touchdown passes, for example. So that's why I'm looking at a guy. The legs are a huge part in my book, Chase. I love all the guys you just named, but there's a billion good different quarterbacks. Jared Goff. There's a lot of quarterbacks who can throw the ball around and get you 200 yards, 300 yards. You're going to need those 2-3 touchdowns, but there's very few guys just get you 60 yards rushing, and that's money in the bank for you week in, week out, plus a rushing touchdown here or there. That's huge. So that's why I have him so high, because I think the upside and the rushing thing is just, even Justin Fields, who struggled, quote unquote, last year, was fantastic as long as he was healthy.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I am in the exact middle between you guys at 13, between 8 and 18. So for me, I think it does come down to, and I'm so excited to say this because I didn't get to say it at all last week, but it is a process kind of decision here. So I have him at 13 because, to me, kind of, Chase, to your point, he is outside of what I am comfortable taking as, like, okay, in redraft, this is my QB1. Like, I'm comfortable with this, and the board falls the way it falls after that. Like, I'm not doing that. But if I'm waiting on quarterback and we're just getting towards the end and I'm just going to take like 2 and gamble, I think he's like the most fun to do it with, because that rushing quarterback upside to me is like, that's where I'm swinging for a homer with someone late. So I'm going to err towards Chris's side, but I do agree with you in the sense that I'm not like locking him in as a QB1 and being like, I'm comfortable with this. But, if at the end of the draft we're getting into the, mid to late teens, I can stack him and Aaron Rodgers and be like, all right, I have like my fail safe. I have, my home run option. Let's just see what happens. Like, I feel really comfortable doing that. And I feel pretty confident that, like, I'm gambling on one of these guys that got it less than a QB1 value will probably make their way up there.
Yeah, no, I think best ball all day long. Like I said, I'm loving him in Dynasty. I want to see it for a year before I'm ready to take that step in redraft, especially at quarterback position where I know I can find points up and down the board there. I don't have to jump on him. That's my take on it there.
Well, and I think I appreciate Adam kind of clarifying too. One of the things that I'm a little bit different on most people is if I don't have a guy, even if I do have, Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, for example, I always take 2 quarterbacks. I always want to have I think value of quarterbacks is extremely important. But if I'm going to take a Jaden Daniels, I'm definitely going to look to have a better backup, quote unquote, where I'm looking at like an Aaron Rodgers or a Jared Goff, a guy who I can always pair up with a thrower that you guys are talking about that I can kind of trust, or even upside guy like Trevor Lawrence, for example. But I like having the upside of those legs, and that usually a few guys in this is available to us when we draft. Anthony Richardson is a guy who's high on a lot of people. I'm not as high on him, but a big part why he's so high is because that rushing potential. But moving on to the next quarterback position, do we even care about the Giants quarterback situation this year?
I care about it insofar as it's a quarterback. So if depending on how deep your dynasty league or your super flex league, 2 quarterback league is, Daniel Jones, like you mentioned, we've seen him put together a top 10 season with his rushing potential. Coming off injury like that, coming off a terrible year, I don't know if we.
Real quick, Chase, I'm gonna jump in. So let's give kind of your perspectives. Your guys are specialists in a sense. Chase, give me a best ball perspective of Daniel Jones. Does he have any value? And then Adam, talking about Superflex Dynasty. Does he have any value this year? What kind of value do you think? So Chase, we'll start with you. Where do we see Daniel Jones as a best ball option?
I was really in on him last year for best ball because of his rushing upside and because of, like Adam had kind of mentioned here when we talked about Jaden Daniels, that home run potential. I'm going to have to see it to believe it. I might be willing to take him if you want to do a 3 quarterback build in, say, an underdog. If you take him as your 3, that's where I have him ranked. I have him 26 right now overall. I haven't done my statistical projections yet, but based on my initial rankings here, I have him down at 26. I have him as a QB3. He definitely has rushing talent. He's got better options around him, but we thought they added talent around him last year, and we saw how that worked. So minimal value this. I will not have near the shares of him this year in best ball that I did last year.
Similarly, I have him at QB 25 as far as redraft is concerned, and then as far as dynasty, like I do not think that he is going to be an NFL starter 2 years from now. I don't really think he's going to be one next year, but I wouldn't be that shocked if he ended up with the job. But ultimately, like, he is not someone. I think his short-term value is greater than his long-term value is, I guess, the point I'm trying to make.
So Adam, for that point, am I going to dump Daniel Jones, or am I going to try to ride him out as if I'm a super flex league and I have him on my roster? Should I just kind of keep him as a quarterback option this year?
It depends. Like if there's someone who like a Giants fan or someone who weirdly does still believe in him, then by all means try to get out. But otherwise, like I think you're gonna have a really hard time moving him in a super flex. Like would I want him to be my QB2? Absolutely not. But hey, if at the cost of, I mean, I think his value is somewhere like a late third right now. It's not like he's a particularly expensive guy. So for that to be my injury insurance and my bye week guy. I think there are worse options in that sense that, hey, he's been a QB1 before. Like you can get those good weeks, especially, if it happens that your quarterback's bye lines up when they're playing a really bad defense, because we have seen him feast on, bad defenses in the past. He's never been someone to particularly do anything against the good ones, but can beat up on a bad one.
Yeah, he's not a guy I'll be drafting, but he'll be a guy I'll be monitoring coming into the bye weeks later in the season, like you said, and looking for those matchups there and seeing if I can maybe catch lightning in a bottle for a week or two there.